Hello, everybody, and welcome to the August 30th Trips and Traps. Andy Serling, joined by Eric Donovan.
We have 5 races to bring you this week, and 3 from Travers Weekend, 3 big stakes races from Travers Weekend. We'll take a look at the test, the Foxwoods Kings Bishop, and the personal Ensign a little bit later on, but let's get started earlier in Travers Week with the 4th race on August 23rd. This is a $35,000 maiden claimer going 5.5 on the turf. Taking a look at the 4 to Tiger and the 8 Torment.
Yeah, now the first thing you're going to see right away is Torment getting left in here, left in the back of the pack. Tiger's going to have some other issues in here. Tiger's a big favorite, but Torment should have won this race, not only getting left for the second time in a row, which is important to point out, but I guess making a bit of a premature move considering he left the eventual winner, who's third to last now, just left him in his wake on the turn.
Yeah, we'll clarify that situation a little bit as Andy was talking about, as you see Torment try to make a move up there on the outside, and the Tiger's in here, getting some traffic issues in the yellow gold silks, getting backed up a little bit there and steadying a bit there, but you know, it's really Torment who's the big story here. The Tiger was a 6-5 favorite. You know, I thought he ran okay, but you know, he was kind of supposed to win this race. Torment is going to pass the eventual winner of the race right here. There's Torment on the outside. The eventual winner is the 1, the Paracella horse Black Ace, and you know, Torment just makes this big move here, probably a little bit too early. Would have been better off sitting back a little bit here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's easy to say now. It's sort of a problem. You know, what do you do when you get left in races? And, you know, do you just allow your horse to settle and relax and then try to make the move? I think that's probably the best move. In this case, I think the rider felt a sense of urgency. The problem is he was obviously much the best in this race, Torment. It's not just getting left. It's the premature move. But I don't really know what to say. It's hard to really blame the rider in this situation. He rode the best horse. He moved a little soon, but he had a lot of other issues as well.
Yeah, I mean, going 5.5 furlongs, I think there's just a tendency for the rider to try to get the horse involved in the race as soon as possible, and by doing that, sometimes you lose sight of, you know, where the strength of the race is, and the fact that he passed the winner on the turn there goes to show you that, you know, just probably moved a little bit too early and would have been better off sitting back a little bit.
Yeah, and the problem is, as you can see from this race basically just completely fell apart in the stretch, and I think that made the Tiger's final run seem a little better than it was. I'm not a fan of the Tiger going forward, not that he couldn't win one of these races. Torment, the problem with Torment is he was 3-1 in this race, and he should have been about 4-5, and he's going to be closer to 4-5 next time he runs, and he's now gotten left like that 2 times in a row. I don't know why we're supposed to have so much confidence he's not going to break 3 lengths behind the field, and he may have found the right spot in this race. He might not find the right spot the next time, and I'd be inclined, though obviously he's better than he finished in this race, but I'd be inclined to look for somebody else if I thought there was somebody that was on sort of equal terms with him.
He'll probably be getting 6 furlongs next time out downstate at Belmont, which may kind of mitigate the poor braking, but on the other hand, the pace might be a little bit slower. It might not collapse as much as this race.
Right, a lot of other factors to take into account. What we're pointing out here is that Torment was much the best horse in this race. We're not pointing out that he's necessarily going to be much the best horse the next time he runs, especially if he decides to get left 3 lengths again.
That's for sure. Move on to our second race. This is race number 2 from August 24th, $35,000 maiden claimer for 2-year-olds going 6 furlongs on the dirt, and we're going to take a look at Star Black and Should Make It. Star Black, the 2 horse, Should Make It, the 3. Step slow out of the gate for Star Black, but that's not really the problem. The problem starts when the 3 horse Should Make It kind of clears off this pack, goes to the outside, comes back down to the inside, and backs up in front of Star Black.
Yeah, Star Black. The truth is, and I'm sort of teasing Eric about this race because it wouldn't have been my first choice to have a horse to show, but he's actually right. This horse really runs well as you see the 3 now backing up to Star Black. Star Black is the horse that we're interested in this race.
And Star Black will start steadying right there. A first-time starter from the Randy Persaud stable, who went off a big price, as you would expect, 28-1. Loses a few lengths there on the shuffle, then kind of, you know, tails off to the back of the pack here, disappears from the screen for a little bit, and then at the top of the stretch will come back on with a pretty wide move. It's going to end up in about the 7 path at the top of the stretch. So this was an eventful first start here for Star Black, and we'll see if he can or she can parlay this into a better effort next time out, or a better finish at least next time out. You see Star Black in the red cap there going very wide off the turn.
Yeah, there was an interesting ride, I should say, by Star Black in this race, both getting into the position where he was behind horses and getting jammed up, and then deciding to make this kamikaze move in the turn. You know, it really depends where Star Black shows up next time. If the trainer gets overly ambitious and thinks, oh, my horse really should have won this race, and runs him in a spot against horses that are much better, then it doesn't matter what race he runs. This is a horse that needs to be correctly spotted.
Yeah, I agree. I thought he I thought she ran well here, considering especially that the winner went wire to wire. There, no more 5, so it wasn't like a race that collapsed or came apart or anything like that. This horse lost a few lengths on the turn, came back with a wide move at the top of the stretch, and ran on to be third. So it was a promising effort.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something else. I don't want any horses that finish behind her in this race. I'm going to be betting against them unless, there are probably a lot of 50-1 shots I'm pointing out. I can't disagree with Eric, though, as much as I want to tease him. Star Black did run much better than the final finish.
Well, I'm sure we'll have a lot of laughs about this horse later on down the road.
Well, listen, a lot of this stuff is just fodder for a long winter to make fun of each other about, say, remember that horse we showed at Trips and Traps? He's like
she's still a maiden
maiden in March. I don't know. This one shouldn't be if properly spotted.
All right, let's get out of the stakes action. Now we'll take a look at the test first, and the second choice in the betting here was Book Review, and Book Review coming off a couple of good efforts for trainer Chad Brown. Going to be the author of her own demise here as she kind of breaks a step slowly, gets bumped by the number 4 horse, and gets squeezed back early on. I just want to continue to show the head on here because I think what happens later on down the backstretch here kind of exacerbates the situation a little bit. There's some room down to the inside. Javier Castellano, doesn't really want to take her inside, and I can see why. Things can get pretty tight up there, then you have no chance in the race. But this horse is going to drop over a little bit on Book Review, and Book Review is going to be stuck in behind there as this one will drop over too, and kind of be trapped in there and really letting the race kind of get away from her. The pace is pretty quick here and just spread out too much.
Yeah, what I like so much about you showing this, Eric, is we're not saying Book Review is going to win this race, and it's not as though either one of us was particularly in love with her chances, but she was the second choice that essentially, if you look at the race, completely failed to show up in here. And what showing her in this situation does is it says she really had a legitimate excuse. We're not telling you she was going to win the race, but I still think that her ability is much closer than her good prior efforts than it was to her finish the test. And she's one horse that I guess when you look at it overall, she had a legitimate excuse, and you can really toss this race.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I would have liked to see her run a little bit better. She did get involved, later in the race, and I would have expected a better finish considering she didn't do too much running early on. But, keep in mind that Contested, the big favorite, and the winner of this race is sitting off a pretty hot pace here in third. The other horses that hit the board were kind of right in behind her a little bit there. So it wasn't like there was a whole lot of closing going on. The front 2 horses were long shots here. They kind of came back to the field. So, it did come together a little bit here, but still, Book Review not even on the screen and just asked to do too much here in a race with such high quality fillies.
Yeah, you're getting to Contested for a second. The fact that she broke a step slow actually worked in her favor and put her in the perfect spot. And you see Book Review turning for home and last. And I think what this race is just a very good example of, Eric, is when it's okay to say, I'm going to throw out that race from a horse. Because frequently people will say, well, if you throw out this one's last effort, well, that's a tricky thing. Okay, the horse is 25-1, and you want to throw out its last race, and you got back stuff to go on. That's fine. You're betting long shots. But in general, when you're betting shorter-priced horses, and you have to do it under the auspices of, I'm going to throw out the horse's last race, it's a very foolish way to play the horses because if there's no good reason you can come up with, listen, maybe the horse had a cough, or maybe there's something that we can't see. But in general, I don't like to just summarily throw out poor efforts. But I think in this case, Book Reviews, this race, she just lost all chance right in the beginning of the race from what happened at the gate and her placement afterwards.
Yeah, and as we showed, she kind of went outside at the top of the stretch, then came back inside. Not sure what was going on there.
She just had no chance at that point. I just think it was one of those things, and I think Javier probably was just so frustrated by that point to say, here I rode a horse that had a legitimate chance in a Grade 1 race, and it just all fell apart right at the start.
All right, the next race after the test, the Foxwoods Kings Bishop for 3-year-olds going the 7-furlong distance. 2 favorites near Trinnyberg and Currency Swap. Also a little interested in the 8 Unbridled's Note, and if there's one of the 3 that I'd want to bet back, it would probably be Unbridled's Note. We'll let them separate here a little bit, and we'll highlight there the 3 on the inside is a Currency Swap, Unbridled's Note to the outside, and Trinnyberg, of course, on the lead here.
Yeah, one thing to like about Unbridled Note is I think as opposed to the other 2 is maybe a horse who's moving in a forward direction. Now, the other 2 have run some very good races, so, I'm not knocking them as horses. Trinnyberg's effort was a little bit of a head scratcher, and it's interesting when you compare the pace of this race run right after our test stakes, this was a slower pace, and you would think, considering by the pace, that the race shouldn't have fallen apart, yet it completely fell apart, while the test didn't really fall apart as the 2nd and 3rd horses ran very well.
That's a very interesting point, and we see right there, there's Currency Swap and Trinnyberg, and out here is Unbridled's Note. And one of the things that happens with Unbridled's Note here, Unbridled's Note was kind of outside in the clear, stalking Dr. Chit a little bit right behind the 10 horse there. But then Fort Loudon, who was behind him, kind of makes a move and is going to get him trapped in here, basically, which I think was a big key. Some good race riding there by Junior Alvarado, keeping those rivals pinned down to the inside there. And Fort Loudon has Unbridled's Note right there, pinned down in between horses, and really does a great job of race riding there. The two favorites, Currency Swap and Triniberg, both going to put forth disappointing efforts in this stretch.
Circle Unbridled's Note so people can see and make sure he's sort of behind horses.
Cap,
right? He's going
to there.
Yeah, Julian is frustrated. He's trying to find a seam, and in retrospect, I guess he should have waited a little bit more. You know, you see him get this seam here, but he never gets it in the clear. He's always got Fort Loudon laying on him, and you got other horses coming up on the outside. It's an interesting question. I was talking to Jay Primanak about it, who liked the Unbridled's horse in this race, and watching the stretch Unbridled's Note, and I liked Fort Loudon. And I think you could make debates that Fort Loudon maybe moved a little sooner, but he did it maybe, as you say, to keep it on Unbridled's Note, and Unbridled's Note never got that absolute clear run. And also, because Julian had to sort of duck inside looking for room, he didn't have a clear, fluid run. Imagine if he was outside the clear where Willie Beeman was, and Willie Beeman was where Unbridled Notes won. I don't think that anybody here can argue that Unbridled Notes would have won the race.
Yeah, I don't think you can either. It gets clear late, 16th of a mile, maybe something like that, but does have Fort Loudon right to the outside, kind of leading on him a little bit there. So it was a lot to ask, I thought, of Unbridled's Note to, get the momentum going and against a pair of horses in Fort Loudon and the eventual winner of the race, Willie Beeman, that kind of had a full head of steam already.
Yeah, and that's something we talk about a lot in the show, and it's something we believe in. The idea of, people say, how come that horse didn't, bust through that hole or something? It's not that easy. Horses get a little bit intimidated, and their horses sort of laying on them and such. That's where the easiest route is always the horse who's the most in the clear, because he's got nobody outside of him, and he's blowing by horses, and you frequently see those horses win those races. This was a race that I think could have had a number of different outcomes, but perhaps as it worked out, the first three finishers, the best horses today at least, Currency Swap, maybe he just finally didn't get an absolutely comfortable trip. He was trying to rally inside. He never got outside and make his run, because when he has won, things have gone very well for him. I'm not saying he's not a good horse, because he is, but he's never encountered any sort of traffic or any sort of difficulties. It's always a good trip.
I'd be a little bit leery of him and Triniberg, who seems like maybe he's on the downside a little bit. Currency Swap, if you say Triniberg is going to get the lead and not fire and back up, then Currency Swap's going to be sitting right behind him. You say, well, Currency Swap's got to run a good race. This is his track. He's, won the Hopeful and the Amsterdam over the track, and he didn't get it done there, and he put forth a disappointing effort. So I don't think I'd really want either of those horses next time out, who will be bet because of their reputations.
As they should be. It depends when these horses show up. I agree. They're an interesting bunch, and I think we're going to take this race apart a number of times in the future, and I think there's a lot of ways to look at this race. It is interesting that Dr. Chit was the best of the speeds. He's the one who sat second. He finished best of all.
Yeah, indeed. And Willie Beeman coming back on that short rest. A lot of people, think Rick Dutcher did some miracles there. I just think Willie Beeman was in the right place at the right time. The race kind of fell into his lap.
He was, honestly, and it's not a sour grape situation. It is sour grapes. I wish Fort Loudon won, but I'm not saying that. I still sit around and I keep thinking to myself, how did Willie Beeman win this race? Because I just didn't think he was good enough. But what can I say? A great training job by Rick. But please, don't listen to people who are telling you that Rick works some sort of magic on these horses on 3 days rest. The stats just don't back it up.
All right, we'll get on to our final race, the Personal Ensign, a race that obviously a lot of people saw and a lot of people have some opinions on already. It's tricky. Breaking from the inside post will stumble very badly at the start and really cost her all chance.
Watch this stumble. I mean, she stumbles that first time, but she stumbles to her knees again. Wow. I mean, Eddie Castro does a terrific job, and she's a very agile filly and just staying up in here. She should have won this race. It's clear. And, you feel bad for a horse who's as good as It's Tricky, especially to wait. She waited 3 months for this race, and to have that happen, it shows how tough racing can be. Now, obviously, Kieran McLaughlin and Godolphin with Questing and Alpha have had a sensational meet, but you don't want to just say, oh, I was so unlucky. Well, things have worked out well for them with good horses. She should have won here. Royal Delta, what do you do, Eric, with Royal Delta going forward? I know you and I have a difference of opinion about the Delaware handicap, but forgetting about that, I cannot take her out of this race, Eric.
Oh, exactly. Now I think the Delaware handicap's kind of a moot point because, whether you think she ran poorly or thought she ran well in there is a whole other story. Love and Pride, the winner of the race, and the two horses we're discussing, Royal Delta and It's Tricky down to the inside there. Whether or not you thought the Del Cap was a good race or a bad race, now she has this kind of clunker here, which she, finishes second in this race here. And, a lot of people say, oh, she only lost by a half length. She still ran well. She did it, I think, on class and guts, and there was really not much in the tank there.
The good Royal Delta would have won this race by upwards of 4 lengths. I have no doubt in my mind. And it's not as though she hasn't run well at Saratoga before, because she had a smashing win in the Alabama, and it's not as though she was coming off of a long layoff. Like, it's tricky. She had run, recently in her race. She was being pointed for this race, and I just don't think that you can say that she's the same horse coming out of this race she's been. She has a great trainer, and maybe, if anybody can get her to go there, Billy Mott certainly can do it. I want to bet against her in the future. It's tricky. I don't know that she's as good as her stablemate Questing, and I don't know what Kier McLaughlin-Godolphin will do with her, but I know she was the best horse in this race.
Oh, she was definitely the best horse, and they're the top three finishers there. It's Tricky on the inside, and Love and Pride, the eventual winner. In between horses, Royal Delta seeming to get out a little bit there at the top of the stretch, and looked like It's Tricky was going to have a chance in here, but just comes up a little bit short in the final stages, and Royal Delta keeps plugging away on the outside. I got to give her a little credit here. The top of the stretch, I'm thinking she could be off the board. She still kind of, is able to get second here. So if Beaumont's able to figure something out, get her back to her top form, obviously she'd be dangerous. But off an effort like this, a horse with her type of reputation, she's going to be a short price again, no matter who she's in against or where she's running. I don't want to take her next time at a short price.
I agree. I think it's fair to say she did on Class alone. Let's give credit where credit's due. A tremendous training job by Todd Fletcher. We talk about Todd winning with the 2-year-olds, and these horses frequently we see him not developing. Well, he has developed a filly that was okay, but really not that good, and only ran well when she was in very good circumstances. And listen, she got a little lucky here, obviously, but that's not the point. The point is she's running better now than she'd ever run in her career, and that's to his credit and the credit of his barn. I think they've done a great job with her. She really didn't run that badly in the Delaware Handicap, losing by under 10 lengths after setting that monstrous pace going 1.25 miles. So I wouldn't just summarily dismiss her the next time she runs, because she is running well. Obviously, we believe, and it's sort of obvious that It's Tricky was better, but I'm going to tell you, Royal Delta, and I love Royal Delta. I mean, we're huge fans of hers, but I'm not taking her, as Eric said, in a subsequent start. She's going to have to prove to me she can get back to good form, as much as I hope she does.
If there's one thing to take out of this race, obviously everybody knows about It's Tricky, the trouble at the start, and that she was probably best there. I think the one point to take out of this race is maybe Love and Pride is improving and just a better horse now than she was a couple months back, or even over the winter, where it seemed like she needed to be loose on the lead to win. Now she's winning Grade 1, stalking the pace a little bit, sitting right off the leader there. So she's obviously an improved horse, and people will kind of probably try to downgrade her effort here because It's Tricky stumbled at the start. Royal Delta didn't fire there. So next time out, you might get a fair price in her.
Right. The lesson from that is that you don't want to get caught up in just noticing all the trouble. You still should acknowledge at least the performances of the winners of these races, and I think that's important. Anyway, we could always use your help. Now, we'll be returning to Belmont after this. We'll be doing a show. I don't know if we'll do a show for the first weekend. We only have 2 days, but we'll try to do something, and we can certainly get some help from you. Trips and Traps at NYRAinc.com.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next year here up at the Spa.